Where legends breathe again. Eldmyth. The silence of the high mountain pass is not empty, it is watchful. A wind, sharp as a flint knife, carves its way between granite peaks, carrying the scent of ice and distant pine. This is a realm of stone and sky, a place where the earth seems to strain to touch the heavens. And here in the thin, crystalline air, the legend begins not with a roar but with a whisper, the whisper of a creature both of the earth and utterly alien to it. We speak of the Griffin. To the ancients, it was more than a mere beast. It was a paradox given form, a living emblem of dual sovereignty. Imagine the raw, untamed power of the king of beasts, the lion, its muscles coiled like great ropes beneath a sun-warmed pelt. Now fuse that terrestrial might with the sublime majesty of the eagle, the undisputed monarch of the boundless blue. This is the Griffin, a being whose very anatomy is a declaration of dominion over two worlds. Its front quarters, all rippling shoulder and terrifying claw, speak of the solid ground of strength that can shake the earth. Its hindquarters, feathered and powerful, and its vast, sweeping wings speak of the air, of freedom that scorns the very ground. Its eyes, keen and gold-rimmed, are said to see not just the movement of a hair in the grass from 1,000 feet, but to perceive the truth in a man's heart. It is a creature born from the impossible marriage of mountain and sky, and its story is etched not just in bestiaries, but in the very stones of forgotten citadels and the trembling leaves of sacred groves. To understand it is to embark on a journey into the deepest corners of human awe. Our first glimpses of this magnificent hybrid emerge from the dust of antiquity, not from one cradle of civilization, but from many, as if the idea itself was too potent to be contained. In the sun-baked lands of ancient Egypt, carvings in forgotten temples depict lion-bodied creatures with falcon heads, guardians of the divine, their forms echoing the god Horus. They stood as sentinels at the thresholds of power, their stone eyes warning of the consequences of trespass. Further east, in the bustling, sophisticated cities of Mesopotamia, the Lamashu and Shedu, winged lions or bulls with human heads, guarded palace gates. Their colossal forms a testament to the belief that such composite beings held the power to ward off evil. But it was in the rugged, myth-saturated world of the ancient Greeks that the Griffin found its most enduring name and narrative home. The Greek traveler and historian Herodotus, writing in the 5th century BC, spoke of the fierce Arimaspians, a one-eyed people of the far north, who ceaselessly warred with the Griffins over a treasure hoard of gold. This was no random detail. The Griffin was intrinsically linked to the earth's most coveted metal. Greek writers like Aristeas of Proconnesus described the creature as the guardian of gold deposits in the remote, wind-scoured mountains of Scythia, a land shrouded in mystery and danger. The logic was as beautiful as it was terrifying. The most noble and fierce of creatures would naturally be the protector of the most precious and luminous of substances. The Griffin was not merely a monster. It was a geographer of the impossible, charting territories that existed on the very edge of the known world, in the blank spaces of the map where dragons and wonders were drawn. This role as a celestial guardian bled seamlessly into the medieval imagination. In the scriptoriums of European monasteries, monks meticulously illuminated bestiaries, transforming the classical Griffin into a potent Christian symbol. Its dual nature, part earth, part heaven, made it a perfect allegory for the dual nature of Christ himself, both human and divine, taming the beast of the earth and aspiring to the heights of the sky. Furthermore, as a creature that would never surrender its gold, it became an emblem of unwavering faith, a guardian against the devilish temptations of greed and heresy. Its image was carved into cathedral choir stalls, emblazoned on heraldic shields, and woven into tapestries. A knight bearing the Griffin on his crest was declaring himself a guardian of sacred oaths and a warrior of divine will. But the symbolism was not solely European. Across the continents, in the high deserts of Persia, the shirtle, a mythical creature often interpreted as a griffin, was carved into cliff faces, a protective spirit warding off evil divs and demons. It was a cosmological constant, an archetype that resonated across cultures, from the steppes of Asia to the castles of Wales. The griffin was a universal answer to a profound human need, the need for a protector whose power was so absolute, whose loyalty to its charge was so fierce, that it bordered on the divine. It was the ideal guardian for tombs, for temples, for the very soul, because it was understood to be incorruptible, its nature fundamentally opposed to the duplicity and avarice of mankind. To speak of the griffin's habitat is to speak of the world's wildest edges. These were not creatures of the gentle, cultivated lowlands. They were the soul of the untamable heights, the desolate wastes, the places where the map frayed and legend began. Imagine the Hyperborean ranges described by the Greeks, razor-edged peaks clawing at a sky of hard, flawless blue. The air is thin and painfully cold, scoured by winds that carry the echo of eternity. Here, amidst the eternal snows and naked rock, the griffin made its eyrie. It was not a nest of twigs and mud, but a formidable fortress of bones, of pilfered armor, of ancient, petrified wood, and woven through it all, the glittering, unmistakable threads of gold. The very structure would gleam in the high sun, a defiant beacon of immense wealth and power, visible for miles to any creature brave or foolish enough to look. Other tales place them in the deep, sun-dappled forests of the Germanic lands, in groves so old and silent they felt like a cathedral. Here, the griffin was a different kind of guardian, a protector of ancient magic and sacred springs, its tawny fur blending with the dappled forest light, its form a shadow between the massive oaks. But whether in the mountains or the deep wood, the griffin's domain was always a place of testing, a physical and spiritual frontier that separated the mundane from the miraculous, the safe from the sublime. The anatomy of the griffin is a masterpiece of evolutionary, or perhaps mythic, design where every feature is optimized for its role as an apex sovereign. Let us start with its head, the head of a giant eagle but scaled to the proportions of its leonine body. The beak is not yellow, but a dark, obsidian-hued keratin, cruelly curved and capable of shearing through leather, bone, and even bronze armor with the ease of a scythe through grass. Its eyes, set forward for predatory depth perception, are a molten, piercing gold, or sometimes described as being like polished amber, holding the cold, ancient intelligence of the mountains themselves. They can spot the twitch of a mouse in a meadow from a mile in the air, and they are said to miss no detail, no flicker of fear or deceit in a human face. The head flows into a powerful leonine torso, the shoulders and forelegs rippling with dense, cable-like muscle. The forelegs end not in paws but in terrifying talons. These are not simply the claws of a lion, they are the scaled, reptilian claws of an eagle, each one a sickle-shaped dagger of black horn, large enough to clasp a full-grown horse or a man in plate armor and lift them from the ground. The grip is irresistible, a final, crushing judgment from the sky. From this formidable front, the body transitions into the powerful, feathered hindquarters of an eagle. The feathers are not of a single color, but a symphony of earth and sky, the tawny gold of a lion's pelt, the dusky brown of a cliff face at dusk, barred with streaks of cream and charcoal. The wings are its most breathtaking feature. When folded, they are a great, layered cloak draped over its flanks. When unfurled, they are a spectacle that can blot out the sun. The wingspan is colossal, casting a sudden, chilling shadow over the land, a shadow that has frozen many a heart mid-beat. The primary feathers are as long as a man is tall, each one a masterpiece of structural integrity, allowing it to ride the high thermals with minimal effort, soaring for days on end. Its voice is a weapon of sound. It can produce the piercing, desolate scream of a giant eagle, a cry that echoes between peaks and signals its dominion. But it can also produce a deep, guttural roar, a rumbling from its leonine chest that vibrates through the very ground, a sound that speaks of raw, terrestrial power. This combination of vocalizations makes it a creature of terrifying presence, heard long before it is seen, its voice a dissonant chorus of two worlds. Its very breath is sometimes said to carry the scent of ozone and hot stone, the smell of a coming storm made flesh. The behavior and social structure of the griffin were subjects of intense speculation and fear. They were almost universally depicted as monogamous, mating for life with a loyalty that became proverbial. A pair of griffins would share a territory spanning miles of mountain range, hunting, nesting, and defending their domain together for decades, if not centuries. Their bond was the stuff of poetry and awe. To kill one was to invoke the eternal, vengeful wrath of the other. Their hunting strategies were a terrifying demonstration of their hybrid nature. They would often hunt in pairs, one acting as the beater, soaring high and screaming to drive prey, deer, wild horses, or even in the darkest tales, cattle and men, into a narrow pass or open plain where its mate would be waiting, descending from the sun in a silent, deadly stoop. The impact of a diving griffin was said to be audible from a great distance, a thunderclap of air displaced by its mass and speed. Their diet, primarily of meat, further cemented their role as lords of the food chain, but there were persistent, mysterious accounts of them also consuming certain herbs, rare mountain blossoms, or even, as some alchemists claimed, small amounts of pure gold to fortify their legendary metallic claws and beak. They were creatures of immense pride and territorial fury, and their concept of property extended far beyond their eyries to the very gold seams in the mountains they called home. Human encounters with the griffin were never casual. They were epical events, moments where the fragile world of men brushed against the immutable world of myth. The most common and most dangerous encounter was with the prospector, the miner, the treasure seeker. These were men drawn by the lure of the very gold the griffin was born to protect. Imagine a Scythian gold hunter, his face weathered by wind and greed, finally finding the mother lode, a glittering seam of ore running through a high cliff face. His triumph would be short-lived. First, a shadow would fall over him, cold and immense. Then a sound, the rustle of vast feathers like 100 sails snapping taut. He would look up into the golden, pitiless eyes of his death. There was no bargaining, no pleading. The griffin was the law of that mountain, and the sentence for theft was swift and absolute. But not all encounters ended in bloodshed. Some folklore speaks of rare individuals, a lost child with a pure heart, a wounded warrior who showed no fear, a sage who offered not theft but respect, who were spared or even aided. The griffin was seen as a judge, its animal instincts fused with a higher, almost divine sense of justice. It could perceive intent, it was said, and while it was merciless to the greedy, it could sometimes show a baffling, unpredictable clemency to the truly worthy. One of the most poignant and widespread myths surrounding the griffin is its legendary enmity with the horse. This was more than a simple predator-prey relationship. It was an epic, symbolic feud. The griffin was said to have a particular taste for horseflesh, finding it the most succulent of all meats. Ancient authors like Pliny the Elder wrote of the griffin's obsession, describing how they would hunt horses with a terrifying, single-minded focus. This animosity was often dramatized in art, most famously in Greco-Roman mosaics which depict the dramatic moment of the attack. The griffin, a whirlwind of claws and fury, descending upon a rearing, panicked steed. The horse, a symbol of civilization, travel, and domesticated speed, was pitted against the griffin, the embodiment of wild, untamed, and absolute power. The outcome was never in doubt. This myth served as a constant reminder of the fragility of human order in the face of primal nature. Our finest creations, our most loyal companions, were but temporary provisions for the true masters of the wilderness. It was a story that fed the deep-seated fear that the wild world could, at any moment, reach in and reclaim what was once its own. Beyond the gold and the horses, the griffin played a crucial role in a more mystical arena, the realm of healing and apothecary. Medieval bestiaries and alchemical texts ascribed miraculous properties to its body parts. A single feather, it was said, could restore sight to the blind. A claw, ground into a powder and consumed with wine, was a potent antidote to any known poison. A cup carved from its talon, an impossibly rare and precious object, would sweat and change color if any venom was poured into it. These beliefs made the Griffin not just a physical threat, but a spectral presence in the chambers of kings and emperors, who lived in constant fear of assassination by poison. Possessing a Griffin relic was the ultimate security, a tangible piece of the mythic world harnessed for mortal power. This created a dark, paradoxical demand. The very creature that slaughtered those who sought its gold was now being hunted for its own body, its mythic integrity commodified by human fear and ambition. This pursuit, however, was considered even more futile and dangerous than gold hunting, for it required not just finding the Griffin, but defeating it in combat, a task considered suicidal by all but the most arrogant or desperate of heroes. The symbolic power of the Griffin ensured its survival long after the edges of the map were filled in and the last unknown mountains were climbed. It migrated seamlessly from bestiaries and heraldry into the new myth-making machines of the Renaissance and the Romantic era. It appeared in elaborate engravings, symbolizing the union of strength and intelligence. Poets like Edmund Spenser in The Faerie Queene used the Griffin as an emblem of vigilant, righteous power. In the 19th century, as the world became increasingly industrialized and rational, the Griffin found a new home in the burgeoning genre of fantasy literature. It became a staple of fairy tales and children's stories, often softened from its terrifying origins into a noble, wise, and rideable companion for heroes. This transformation was crucial. It allowed the Griffin to transition from an object of superstitious fear to an object of wonder and nostalgia. It was no longer a monster to be avoided, but a lost wonder to be yearned for, a symbol of a world where magic was still potent and the wild places still held majestic secrets. In our modern world, the Griffin is more alive than ever, though its domain has shifted from the remote mountains to the sprawling landscapes of the imagination. It is a cornerstone of the fantasy genre, appearing in countless role-playing games as a majestic mount or a formidable high-level foe. It soars through the pages of epic novels by authors like J.K. Rowling and J.R.R. Tolkien, and across the silver screen in blockbuster films, rendered with a realism that our ancestors could never have conceived. Its image adorns corporate logos, university crests, and the names of high-performance vehicles, always conveying the same core message: power, prestige, and guardianship. The modern Griffin is often sanitized, its edge of terrifying wildness smoothed away. Yet in the best modern interpretations, that ancient, dual nature remains. It is still a creature of contradiction, a bridge between worlds. It represents our enduring fascination with hybridity, with the breaking of boundaries, and with the idea that true power lies in the synthesis of opposites: strength and flight, earth and sky, instinct and intelligence. So what does the Griffin ultimately represent? It is not merely a relic of a credulous past. It is a permanent resident of the human psyche. It is the embodiment of the untamable wilderness that exists both outside us and within. It is the fierce guardian of the treasures we seek, whether they be literal gold or the more abstract treasures of knowledge, virtue, or purpose. It is the judge that confronts us when our greed outweighs our respect for the natural world. The Griffin's enduring lesson is one of balance. It reminds us that power must be coupled with perspective. The lion's strength is useless without the eagle's lofty vision. It warns us that the pursuit of treasure, if undertaken with avarice, will inevitably summon a protective, destructive force. And it offers a sliver of hope, suggesting that for those who approach with purity and courage, even the most fearsome guardians may grant passage. The mountains of the world have all been mapped, their secrets laid bare by satellites and satellites. But the Griffin does not need physical mountains anymore. It has retreated into the higher, more inaccessible peaks of story and symbol. And from those ethereal heights, it continues to watch, to judge, and to remind us of the wild, magnificent, and terrifying possibilities that still flutter at the edges of our perception. Listen the next time a sudden shadow passes over you on a bright day, or you hear an unfamiliar cry in the wind. Perhaps it is just a cloud, just a bird, but perhaps it is the echo of a wingspan that once blotted out the sun. Another legend fades, but the next awaits. Like this video, subscribe and continue the journey through myths.